Good morning. Three Angels Fellowship Church, where I'm a member, the pastor there has decided to focus on Revelation. This month, next month, the month after that. Matter of fact, we probably won't be done with Revelation until about Christmas time. You want an in-depth study? Come on over. Interestingly enough, this quarter's lesson is also sort of focused on Revelation from a different standpoint. It is looking at how other passages in the Bible help you understand Revelation. Scholars are relatively confident that they have found around 1,000 references in Revelation to other parts of the Bible. 1,000 references to other parts of the Bible. So to understand those references in Revelation, you understand what happened in these other sections of the Bible, and it gives you a better understanding of Revelation. Ezekiel has a fair share of these references. Matter of fact, a doctoral student not too long ago did their dissertation on finding a reference to Ezekiel in every single chapter of Revelation. And it's now doctor. So her dissertation was successful. I have not read it. I don't know that much about it, other than this is something that was recently done. I have heard several people say, if you want to understand Revelation, read Ezekiel, because there's so much cross-referencing between the books of the Bible. Another scholar has said many times, if you are going to be a competent Bible student, you must be a rereader. You can't read it one time and think you understand it. You have to go back and reread. You have to find the references and reread. This morning we're going to do a little bit of that. Our passage is the letter to the church of Ephesus. At first read, as Levi did this morning. Okay, there's a group, they lost their first love, get it back. What's the next one? Our pastor did 2 sermons just on this passage. There's a lot here. And we're going to cover something that he didn't, at least not publicly. Revelation 2, verse 2. I know your works, your labor, your patience, and that you cannot bear those who are evil. Does that phrase remind you of anything else in the Bible? No? Well, let's go back and look at another passage. You'll notice I'm flipping a lot of pages. Genesis. We were in Revelation 2. We're going to go to Genesis 3. What happens in Genesis 3? The fall. Now, before we get too hard on Adam and Eve and start dissecting everything about what they did wrong and how we would never do that, how many new things were Adam and Eve experiencing every single day? So, was a talking serpent in a tree that big of a surprise? If there are new experiences that are happening this is another new experience. Caution. The adversary, the devil, Satan, understands this. And he brings temptations from ways that we don't see because we experience things like that every day. And that's part of the reason he is so successful. So they eat, and that evening God comes walking in the garden. And Adam and Eve hide. The first time they ever do, they hide. Do you ever remember hiding from your parents? I can remember my boys hiding from me. I can remember hiding from my parents. We generally do when we know we have messed up. And that's exactly what's happening with Adam and Eve. They know they have done wrong. They may not understand everything about it, but they know that it's not right. And they don't want to face God. And they heard the sound, this is verse 8 of Genesis 3. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. And the Lord God called to Adam and said to him, "Where are you?" So he said, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." And he, God, said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat?" Did you do what I asked you not to do? Is that why you're afraid? Well, rather than saying yes, he does what we all do. This woman that you gave me, Eve, did you do what I asked you not to do? Well, the serpent God says, "Cursed are you, you shall crawl on the ground and eat dust all of your life," to the serpent. To Eve, "Cursed are you, childbirth is going to be painful." To Adam, Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field, and the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground. For out of the ground you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return. I know your works, your labor, your patience. Revelation. Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it. Your works. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. You shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. Life's going to be hard. If you go back to Genesis, you begin to understand a little bit more about Revelation. I know your works. I know your labor. I know your patience. I know what you're going through. I know how hard it is for you. Revelation 2:5. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen. Genesis 3:22. Then the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out of the garden to till the ground from which he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. Remember from where you have fallen. Where did Adam and Eve fall from? What was the garden like? In your imagination, what did the tree of life look like in the middle of the garden? Was it a big oak? Was it a little sumac? Was it a flowering cherry tree? What did the tree of life look like? What did the garden look like? What is the best outdoor nature place you have ever been? The most visually appealing, the most comfortable area. Now, based on my experience, based on what I love, based on the various things that are important to me, the closest place to the Garden of Eden that I have been is a couple of places on the island of Maui in Hawaii. That's the best I can picture. But I have to believe that the Garden of Eden was better than that, because there was no decay. There was nothing dying there. It was the most gorgeous thing. Remember from where you have fallen. How many times do you picture Adam and Eve walking up to that garden entrance and just looking in? Thinking about everything that was a result of eating a piece of fruit. You know, they tell us that when grief happens in our lives, we have to go through certain things to have closure. Did Adam and Eve ever have closure for that grief? For the grief of losing a son? For the grief of watching the world start to decay? For the grief of never looking again at your Creator's face? I can understand how when life got bad, when there was something that they needed an answer for, they would walk up to the garden. Lord, what do I do? Lord, I love you. I'm sorry. Lord, are you there? Have you ever had questions like that in your life? There's something else I want to point out. Genesis 3:24. So he drove out the man, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. Flip over to Exodus, if you would. Exodus 25. I am willing to bet that there are some of you that could quote this text. Exodus 25:8. And let them make me that I may dwell among them. Exodus 29:45 and 46 says something similar. Build me a sanctuary that I can dwell among the children of Israel. You want to know what the interesting thing is? It is the Hebrew word shakah. It's a root word that the word Shekinah comes from. Have you heard of the word Shekinah? God's Shekinah glory. The presence of God was represented by Shekinah. Now here's the fun part. Genesis 3:24, and he placed cherubim, placed, shakah. Make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. Dwell, shakah. Exact same Hebrew word. Is an idea starting to form? A flaming sword. If you go back to Revelation 1 and 2, Revelation 1 and then Revelation 2 references back to Revelation 1. What is one of the descriptions of Christ? Crazy description. Out of his mouth is a sharp, two-edged sword. Go to Ezekiel. Ezekiel 1. There is the craziest dream recorded that I would seriously consider taking my son to a psychologist if he told me he had this dream. Ezekiel in vision sees 4 beings. Each being is full of eyes. It has 4 faces. It's standing on wheels. They always go forward. Riding on whatever this is something like a throne, and there is a being on the throne whose appearance from the waist up and also from the waist down is like fire. God placed at the entrance to the garden himself in the form of a flaming sword. Adam and Eve would come up to the garden right before this flaming sword as they searched for God. Did they understand that they were standing in his presence? Probably not. Do you understand how often you stand in the presence of God? I know I don't. He's more places than we give him credit for. The book Patriarchs and Prophets, page 62. Mrs. White tells us the Garden of Eden remained upon the earth long after man had become an outcast from its pleasant paths. The fallen race were permitted to gaze upon the home of innocence, their entrance barred only by the watching angels. At the cherubim-guarded gate of paradise, the divine glory was revealed. Hither came Adam and his sons to worship God. Here they renewed their vows of obedience to that law, that transgression of which had banished them from Eden. When the tide of iniquity overspread the world, and the wickedness of men determined their destruction by a flood of waters, the hand that had planted Eden withdrew it from the earth. But in the final restitution, when there shall be a new heaven and a new earth, it is to be restored more gloriously adorned than at the beginning. One of the things that we've been doing at Three Angels. Once a quarter, we have what the pastor's calling a wrestle room. It's a 3-hour Bible study. He comes with 3 or 4 passages in the Bible and absolutely no agenda. Bring whatever reference material you have that you use, and let's wrestle with these texts. Let's try to figure out what's going on. And it was in one of these times that this passage in Ephesians came up. And we started looking at some of the various aspects that I've been talking about today. But there's one thing that didn't come up there that I thought of at a later point in time. And it's a picture of God that affects me very deeply. So I apologize for getting emotional about it. When Adam and Eve, prior to the fall, walked with God, what did he look like? You ever think about that? What does God the Father, what did God the Son look like when 2 created beings could look straight at them? Something to think about. There's not a right answer. We could probably come up with some wrong answers, but we're not going to go there today. But what did he look like? When God came walking in the garden in the cool of the evening and had to say, Adam, Eve, where are you? Was his countenance already veiled? I think so. I don't have anything to base that on. But there were sinful people there now. But they still recognized him. They still knew who he was. And yes, I do believe it was face to face. They get expelled from the garden. Do they ever see God again in their life? No. We don't know, the Bible does not tell us how old Adam and Eve were when they were expelled from the garden. The only reference point we have is that, or 2 reference points. One is that Adam was 930 years old when he died. We don't know where that 930 years starts at. Was it from the time God breathed into his nostrils? Good possibility. I don't know. Was it at the time from the time when sin started and they were expelled from the garden? Possibly. We don't know. We don't know how old they were when Cain and Abel were born. The Bible doesn't tell us. It does tell us that Adam was 130 years old when Seth was born, and that Adam lived for 800 years after Seth's birth. So for at least 800 years, Adam and Eve could walk up to that flaming sword and look into the garden and see where they had been expelled from. I believe, and this is strictly my belief, that they could see the tree of life. They could look into the garden and they could see that tree. They could not touch it. We are creatures that learn by repetition. You know, all you got to do is watch young people growing up. The older one, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that. Second one comes along. The older of the two says, don't touch that, don't touch that. It's what we do. It's who we are. After 800 years of don't touch that, Christ comes. Second coming happens. Jesus is now a human. He carries our form for eternity. Do Adam and Eve recognize Jesus when he is that changed from what they saw previously? I have a hard time recognizing high school classmates. It's been far from that long. Do they recognize him? I picture Jesus with an arm around each of them, walking up to the tree of life and saying, "Eat." And I see both of them. We can't touch that. With nail-scarred hands, Christ reaches up, picks the fruit, and hands it to them. This is how much I love you. Eat, please, eat. And he will do that for each of us. Bearing the scars of his love for us. You know, I don't intend to make you cry. But understand that much love is something that I desperately cherish. I want so bad because it's so hard to find it on this earth. But we are redeemed. Christ has redeemed us. And to the church who has regained their first love, The promise is that I give you to eat of the tree of life.